it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater, and welcome back to Her Success Story. Really excited about this week's guest. Her name is Marissa Fayer. For those of you who have never met Marissa, she is a dynamic woman. So when she was a kid, she was the one that her family encouraged her to study science and math. She went on to space camp programs, okay? She attended a university for engineering. This was her world and her focus. And then Marissa really saw that the exploration of humanity became very important to her. And she got involved in looking at the experiencing with companies promoting women's health and products, developing technology to detect breast cancer, uterine cancer, and cervical cancer. This is when Marissa realized there's a bigger path for her, a path for her that she is on today. One of the wonderful sayings that Marissa has is health equals choices. If there's one thing we know for sure from studying space exploration, it's that the possibilities are endless. On that note, I'm going to welcome Marissa Fayer, the head of HERHealthEQ nonprofit, as well as Fayer Consulting. Marissa, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ivy. I love it.
So share a little bit about this transition. So you finished college. I always say, we go to college, we want to be, a doctor, lawyer, and an Indian chief. Or as we're growing up, we want to be a doctor, lawyer, and Indian chief. And then we start narrowing it down, and then we start narrowing it down. And then after college, it continues to evolve for a while. So share a little bit of your evolution and how you've come to run a nonprofit and a company today.
Yeah, so I started in engineering for medical devices for so many years, and so I always knew I kind of wanted to help people. I was not going down the doctor path. Quite honestly, it was way too much school, and my brother was doing that, and God forbid we have two competitors in the family. So my way of helping people is to create these medical devices. And so really as an engineer, we like to fix problems. And so for me, I saw a problem that needed fixing. And that really led me to where I am today. I founded HERHealthEQ to solve a problem that's associated with women's health equity around the world. And I lived in many different countries, and I lived in Latin America and in several different places in the States and things like that. So I saw that this problem was around. And as a woman in the medical field, and I saw all this surplus medical equipment and knowing how women around the world hold up their society on an absolute global scale, I kind of fell into all of this. I was never predestined to start a nonprofit. I had no idea that that's what I was going to do. I'm a problem solver. And so bridging the foreign nonprofit space to solve a problem that affects hundreds of millions of women around the world was kind of how I got to where I am. And still a problem solver. It's like you always have your engineer hat on, but you never, I don't need to necessarily practice it, but it's kind of who I am in my bones. And so now focused on women around the world, that's kind of figured out what I was supposed to be doing.
So what drove you to go from being involved in selling equipment all around the medical field within this area, right? To saying, okay, I'm going to start a global nonprofit. Do you wake up? There's a transition, and you're also started a consulting company at the same time, and there's a certain MO to people who wake up and do these things. So let's get into this a little bit. Like where did this? What were the 1, 2, 3 steps of how this developed?
So, I left corporate life. I spent 15 years in corporate life. I was actually developing the medical devices. And so, I was on the manufacturing floor. I was running operations. I run manufacturing facilities and things like that. And so it was wonderful, but it was a grind. And I loved it. It's just, there was always something I was fighting against. And I realized that was corporate life. And I realized I was supposed to become an entrepreneur. But with that said, yeah, I had no plan. So I left corporate life after 15 years and just said like, oh, okay, totally. I'm going to start a company. So I focus on the for-profit first because in my mind, the nonprofit wasn't formed. And so started a consulting firm and so set that up, did the legalities behind it and started speaking to some people that I knew in the past and kind of put myself out there and had a few great clients. And then once that became a little bit stable, there was always an itch inside of me to say like, come on, you have to help, you're supposed to be helping people, etc. And that's kind of where I was able to form the concepts behind HERHealthEQ. But honestly, I hired coaches. I needed people to help me, and I'm the one with the ideas and the ways to move it forward. But everyone needs help, and everyone needs understanding to try to figure out how to get through there. So that's what I did. I hired some coaches to help me kind of form the business and get my mindset behind it. And so, yeah, and at this point now running both at the same time. The consulting business is actually like 5 businesses into one. The nonprofit, I feel like every project is its own business. So that's always fun. But that's kind of how I started. That's how I dug in to start.
And how long have you been at this, in this piece of the journey?
Yeah, so this piece is 4 years. And so HERHealthEQ is 2 years old. And my consulting firm is 4 years old. And so, yeah, it's just in its infancy. And I know that. And with HERHealthEQ, we're just very, we operate like a startup nonprofit. And we're starting to get into this growth phase. So 2019 we know is our growth phase, and we're ready for that. And so it's all been exciting years, but now it's the really big exciting year. And I think we're going to say that every single year, especially as a startup, every year is the next exciting year.
And well, the one thing that when we've talked in the past is you're all about, you do strategic advising under your consulting company. So you're all about that strategic plan and the ability for you to then look at that perspective and bring it to HERHealthEQ gives you a huge advantage as a CEO as well as executive director, so to speak.
Exactly. So we're running HERHealthEQ like a for-profit. And I think
tell us more about that because that's interesting.
Yeah. So nonprofits in the past have just been very inefficient. And so I wanted to run it differently. The other point is I don't know how to not be efficient. I'm an engineer. It's what I physically studied for a living. So for me to run a company that's not efficient, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself, quite honestly. And so nonprofits traditionally have been very inefficient. They wait for grant funding. They ask for $5 at a time. They employ a lot of people and aren't actually executing upon projects. That wasn't the model that I wanted to use. And so what we're doing is we're running this like a for-profit company, with the exception of we are not taking profits. And so everything obviously goes back into the business and goes back into our projects and goes back to help women around the world. And so that's our reinvestment. That's exactly what it is. And that's where our profits go. And listen, as we grow, we are obviously, taking salaries and everyone still has to be paid and things like that. So it's not, again, we're running it like a corporation. And so we want to be highly efficient. We want to focus on the projects. We also want to take the step of getting out of the traditional grant receiving and grant funding. We're very happy and we do apply for grants and we do receive grants, et cetera. So I'm not going to say that we're never going to, accept a grant because we absolutely always love to, but we don't want our entire livelihood tied to a grant and or waiting for money to come in. We have just made the decision to partner with corporations because corporations, they do want to do good and they do have several like-minded missions. So there's most corporations, want to help women. Some are in the health space. Some want to help women's health around the world. Some want to help entrepreneurship. There's so many different, and so we have started to find the ones that are that resonate and match with us. And so through corporate partnerships, they get to put their name to some of our projects. They get to put their money, which to them is very small amount of money. And it helps us dramatically. And so we're able to move forward our projects instead of waiting for, like USAID to come in and give us a grant for multi-years that is very restrictive. A lot of these companies, they just want to do good and they want a partner that is executing upon that they can put their name on. And so, and that's a lot of the corporate side that we're trying to focus on.
It becomes a win-win, right? It becomes a win-win for both entities, and it gives you, grants, you're right, do have a lot of things tied to it and a lot of restrictions and how you can navigate it, how you use it, how you don't. And the grant ends up running the nonprofit very often, right, versus the nonprofit using the funding for the mission.
Exactly. And I'm very focused, and we are all very focused on our mission, and we don't want mission creep. And we are happy to evolve, and we have evolved. We will continue to evolve, but we want to focus on what we want to focus on as opposed to what somebody tells us to focus on. And that's the important side. And that's what a corporation does. A business focuses on what they want to. And so that's very much kind of how we're running the business. And we've seen success, and it's also an education for so many people in the nonprofit
Let's go here for a second.
Yeah.
So in the education space, what has in this journey, so you started Fayer Consulting 4 years ago, you got that up and running, created an income for yourself to live, which is vitally important, by the way.
Absolutely.
And then you were able to then go on to start building out HERHealthEQ. In this journey that you've taken on, what surprises have come your way? Because you're a pretty smart, astute woman. And, we've had a few opportunities to get to know each other, being introduced through some mutual friends. And there are still things, I'd love to know what has surprised you in this.
Listen, starting a nonprofit, like I feel like I'm back in kindergarten. Like I am learning from scratch, which after a 15, 18-year career, like it's always a hard process to take on. So that's been interesting. The biggest surprise is that I can translate what I know in the for-profit space over to the nonprofit space. And I think that's really interesting. Like I have discovered that I'm great at working what I'm good at, and then I have to surround myself with people who can supplement what I'm not great at. And so that we can work together. It's one of the
greatest learning lessons of life.
Yeah. And that's,
know your strengths, hire your weaknesses.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I figured out. And that's kind of the education side of it, because people are teaching me this other side of things. I've never had to raise money and ask people for money. And, asking for money as far as a consulting project or things like that, I thought it was a different animal. It's actually exactly the same thing. And it took me a little while to learn that. And so I had to have people more or less show me like how they pitch nonprofits. And then I realized some of that wasn't working. And then I took some of the great things that were working. And so I was able to like focus on my strengths, knowing what I do, and then fill in my weaknesses that these other people have shown me on the education side of things. And I also realized that I like to do things with others, and I don't want to grow this by myself. This is not, the organization is not called Marissa Fayer. It's called HERHealthEQ, so that we are focusing on women. And I want to do this with other people, and I want other people to
what I hear you're saying, right. So what I'm hearing you're saying is collaborate. You're a good collaborator, number one, and collaboration is key to growth.
Absolutely. You can't grow by yourself. I mean, you can, but quite honestly, then there's nobody to share it with. So what's the point? it's a very lonely journey. And I've done it as a consultant. I did it very much by myself for a while. And then, you get to a point where you want to celebrate the wins with people. And if you're doing it by yourself, you can't do that. And so every time we install a project, I want to celebrate that with somebody. Every time I land a contract for the consulting firm, I want to celebrate that. And, every time I help a company get funded and get access to capital, and then, through some strategic advisory work, like I want to celebrate that with people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big team. It just has to be a few key people around you that you can celebrate that with. And it's important to collaborate with others, because nobody thinks by themselves in a vacuum. It's just, it's not healthy. And as an introvert, like I always think that that's healthy, but I know it's not.
And there's great value when you bring fabulous minds together, and fabulous minds with different strengths, because then you have the ability, when you truly brainstorm on what you're saying early on is everything is possible, right? What's possible, everything is possible. When you truly sit down and brainstorm on possibility, you have the ability to see it from so many different perspectives that could then build.
Right.
Because when we brainstorm on possibility of ourselves, it's completely linear.
Right. Absolutely.
So what are some of the successes you've had in this? I mean, you've on a personal side, you're traveling the world, which
yes.
If you enjoy travel is great. But what are some of the successes that for the Fayer Consulting, for HERHealthEQ, and for Marissa?
Yeah, so for me, you definitely hit on one of them. My biggest success is being able to live the life that I want to, and that absolutely involves traveling. So with Fayer Consulting, I'm traveling and doing a lot of advisory work in Europe and Africa, all around the States and Latin America. And then same thing with HERHealthEQ. And so as the face of HERHealthEQ, I'm able to travel to all these amazing places, and I'm able to do that. So that's like a huge win personally for me. I mean, my personal mission is women's health equity around the world. So anything that I can do to help women live and have a more, healthy, equal, equitable society, that's kind of what I'm behind. And so when I travel, I get to see that, or I get to see the inequities that I'm hopefully working to solve. So in reality, every time I help somebody, that's a huge success for me. And so when women have health around the world, that's a really big win. When I help businesses grow and their profitability soars and they expand, it's a win. And so, a lot of the things that I've created are because of my personal mission. And but in reality, my greatest successes, I'm able to do what I'm supposed to be doing. I never thought this is what I was supposed to be doing, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's many things that have led up to this. And but I was meant to help women's health equity around the world. That's 100% my mission. So my success is being able to do that. And so it's a lot of small successes in reality. And there's never like one big one. And maybe in a few years, who knows, that I'll have a gigantic one, but it's all the small ones that really are adding up to a really big success, and they just keep adding on to each other. So every day, every woman that's helped, every company that's helped, every new product that comes out, every company that gets funded that's focused on women, those are all small successes that add on to like the successes of life. And it's the only way that you can create this meaningful and sustainable change and success. And success is always really hard to quantify, because it's not like the sale of a company or the implementation of a program or all of these things. Like it's all these little things that add up to it. And don't get me wrong, like I have to remind myself sometimes of that.
Right. So yeah. So first of all, I think it's hard for many of us to stop and celebrate the little things.
Yeah.
Yet the little things have a momentum of adding up and gaining traction. Mm-hmm. And if we take that pause and celebrate them, and as we celebrate them, and this is a great lesson that you were sharing here, is taking that pause and celebrate those little things, because they add up to the next opportunities, the next growth stages. And when you look back and you've seen what you've accomplished, we're so busy running forward that we forget to reflect a little bit. And there's wonderful lessons in those reflections.
Absolutely. And that's something that I was reminded of. I spent 3.5 weeks in Africa, and, everything has twists and turns, but I was able to take the time to reflect, to realize that, listen, didn't happen exactly the way I wanted it to, but it's a step in the right direction. And each one is a success, and you have to just keep moving forward. And it's momentum. That's exactly what it is.
Any tips or advice for our listeners today? If you're thinking about starting a business, if you're thinking about taking something to the next level, if you're thinking about, before we even go there, actually, we're going to table that question for a second, because I want to ask you something first.
Yeah.
How do you manage yourself running two completely different yet aligned organizations?
My calendar is very color coded, different colors for every different project. I'm pretty highly scheduled, but I do have downtime, or flex time. I always when I'm traveling, I typically take time for myself. That's my time. So if I have to be in a business meeting in San Francisco, I will take an extra day and go and see something that I want to do and see, or meet with some friends that I don't necessarily see. So, it's a lot of juggling. It's a lot of focus. It's a lot of lists. I'm a big list keeper. I'm a calendar coder. I have to have my inbox at 0 because I need to know what's happening, but that's probably an OCD thing. Who knows? But it's trying to be very organized. And for me, the biggest focus is focusing on the end and main goal. And so making sure that everything is aligned towards that mission, towards women's health equity, again, on the for-profit, nonprofit side. And it's just focusing on it. And I've started to get very good at saying no.
Tell us more. Hold on.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So
saying no is, I think, one of the greatest growth experiences there is out there. So what do you say no to, and why?
So I say no to things that are just not in alignment to what I want and what I believe in. And again, no great offense to men, but I'm just not working on a product and or a company that's focused on something that's specifically men's, only men. It's not towards my mission. And while of course that hurts, because, that could have been income that is supporting my life or supporting the organization or things like that. It's not core to who I am. And so I've started to get good at saying no to that. I've also started to get great at saying no to things that I just don't want to do. And it's not that it's out of my comfort zone. If I'm exhausted and know that I should go home and just go to the gym or, go to sleep, I don't need to be at 17 cocktail hours per night. It just doesn't help. Maybe 1 or 2 is fine. All 17, not important. You get to a point where it's not value add and you have to pick and choose. And so maybe there's some research that comes along with that. So I'm going to research who's going to be at most of the events, or I'm going to find out, or saying no to, cramming something into my schedule when I'm supposed to have lunch with a friend who I haven't seen in 7 months. That's more important. That's what feeds your soul. And so I'm going to be a better business person after that lunch.
So in looking at what you said, number 1, understanding your mission, being true to your mission, which is also part of your why, what you're doing, and the whole why concept. So why you're doing what you're doing, what your mission is about, and looking at that and making sure all your actions you're taking that are aligned that way. Making sure your values and your priorities are in alignment.
Yes.
I could see you've done some work with coaches. Your
Yes.
values and your priorities are in alignment, and you have, in saying that, knowing that if you are not happy and healthy, you can't do your work. So we must make sure we're seeing our girlfriends. We must make sure we're taking care of our own health. We must make sure we have a full life and not just a business world.
Correct, because the business comes and goes, it ebbs and flows. You can change your mind, you can go into a different business. But the people who are important to you they're always there no matter what. And if they are true friends, true family, true supporters, then they're always going to be there no matter what you're doing. Work is work, and you have to love what you're doing and be passionate about it. And I really do wholeheartedly believe in that. But you need to have people who are also supporting you, because you need people to pick you up when you're having those bad days, or when something or a deal doesn't close or something bad happens, because they're the ones that are still going to be there. And the business it's not supportive in a mental capacity.
So what tips do you have for our listeners today in their building out their careers, their businesses, their nonprofits?
Yeah, so it's something that you touched on before. So success is absolutely not linear, and I am 100% a true testament to that. Don't expect it or want it to follow a straight path. First of all, it's incredibly boring. And most importantly, genius does not happen while you're following the rules and staying in the lane. And so I think that searching...
repeat that.
Yeah.
Repeat that, because that's brilliant.
So genius does not happen while you're following the rules and staying in your lane. So you really just have to search for what matters to you, and then the success will be there. I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do, but I knew that this was important to me. And so success is finding me now. And I was successful in what I was doing before, but this is what I want to do. This is what matters to me. And so success will find you wherever you happen to be. But you do have to keep your eyes and your ears completely open, because you never know what's going to happen in this journey. Because again, I never thought I was going to be in the nonprofit world, but all of a sudden it hit me like a freight train. And but only because my eyes and ears were open. And so it's a fun journey, and none of us are ever done with it. And your eyes and ears have to be open to see what's next, and see what that next success is going to be, and see where you're going to take it. Because what you see right now is not the end goal. It's going to look like something different. And we all think we might know what that end goal is. And I've been working through this as you start to, it's the end of the year, you're starting to journal and just to figure out what's next. I'm not sure what this looks like in 20 years. I know what this is going to look like in a few years, but you don't know what that next goal is. You don't know who you're going to meet at one of these events. You don't know anything. So your eyes and ears have to be open. Success is not linear, and it's not fun to stay on a straight path, so you might as well just go for the journey.
Love that. Go for the journey. Don't over-evaluate what you think success is supposed to look like. Be in the journey and let the successes appear, celebrate them, and acknowledge them.
Absolutely. 100%.
And from there you can build.
Yes.
Love that. Love that. Well, Marissa, thank you so much for joining me here today. Listeners, check out marissafayer.com as well as HERHealthEQ. Learn more about the mission, learn more about Marissa is all over the world. She is a speaker, she is a consultant, and she has the founder of HERHealthEQ, making a difference for women's health globally, which is a beautiful thing to share out there with the Her Success Story community. The more healthy women we have, the longer we're around, the bigger impact we can make. Listeners, please subscribe to her success story, share her success story, and leave us some comments and notes so we know what else you want to hear, listen to, and we can deliver it for you and with you. Thank you for joining me here today. Marissa, thank you, and we will continue to follow HERHealthEQ and Marissa Fayer.
Thank you.